Well, hello there, and welcome to Faith, Culture and Politics in Australia with Mark. Today's guest is joining me again. I caught up with Debra Leigh a little while ago for a couple of other documentaries that she had produced, which is significant, had significant viewing. Witness Statement is one of them that I'm talking about, and also the Story of Ingi Doyle dissection. So Debra will be joining me shortly, but I just wanted to show you the places you can go and view. So obviously Global Truth Network is on Rumble, so a lot of the documentaries have been loaded up on there that you can check out, and also the Global Truth Network Substack page as well. There's all that information there that Debra uploads onto, and part of that recent article was in regards to who is Trevor Hold and why is the ABC defaming him. Concerned landowner trials a non-toxic treatment for fire ants. In this story here, Southern Cross University under fire for giving research funding to conspiracy theorist Trevor Hold, and that's come out of the public broadcaster, the taxpayer-funded ABC, and you can make your own mind up about that. But here's the Rumble channel little notes that's been put in, and I'm just going to quickly read this out. Attempting to protect his land, animals, and the natural ecosystems on and around his property, Trevor called on to question the chemical baits being spread by the NFAEP to eradicate fire ants in his area. Note that Trevor has never had fire ants on his property, but the NFAEP treat his property regardless. After some of his animals started dying following multiple treatments of fire ant baits on his property over several years, Trevor requested a moratorium on fire ant baiting on his property. He did this by providing reasonable excuse documentary evidence which allows a person to legally obstruct the treatment procedure. For his efforts, Trevor was bullied and attacked by the authorities and even called a conspiracy theorist by the taxpayer-funded ABC. In this video, Trevor tells his side of the story, and the viewer, let you make up your mind, as Debra asks, is he a conspiracy theorist or not? You decide. So let's play that now for you.
I asked my partner what she wanted to do after her diagnosis with ovary cancer, and she said, I would love to buy a small block of dirt and get some cows. We don't have cows for slaughter, they're not for meat, they're for pets. Trying to generate an income from a small cattle herd was challenging. In 2019, this property started to be treated by the National Fire Ant Eradication Program. And the helicopters were just relentless for months, doing all this area. It was almost like a war zone. One of the horses ran through the fence and got injured, and one of the cattle got injured in the barbed wire fences because the noise from the helicopter was spooking them. They're stressing out the horses and stressing out the cattle. I had my first calf die on 30th of November 2023. We've got to put everything in writing. I says, I have concerns. I've got some dead cows, some dead calves. I said, I've got some severe concerns. And until they're addressed, I said, I'm not letting you back on the property. To see the extreme behaviour that they went to force entry onto my property that didn't have fire ants. At the end of the day, I am responsible for the health and well-being of the animals that reside on this property. I'm fighting for my choice not to expose my cattle to toxic chemicals. There's obviously something wrong.
So there you go. That was a trailer from the newly released documentary Trevor's story there, and I'm going to bring in our guest Debra Leigh, who is the person behind that documentary, and Deborah, I've got to say before we start, I never, it just really surprises me the quality content that you've put out with these documentaries. I watched Witness Statement. I was very heavily involved with distributing the work behind that, as well as Ingi's story, dissection. And after watching the full documentary again, I'm impressed with the work that you're putting together as a director of these. And from what I understand, we've talked about this before, a lot of it is funded by you, yourself, and it's really just to show Australians the other side of stories that our mainstream, I guess, isn't. So welcome back again, and thank you so much for everything you do and the quality of work that you're actually bringing to the Australian people with these documentaries.
Well, thank you very much, Mark, and I appreciate your support in allowing me to come onto your platform and share this information with the people. It's interesting, I must say I'm not a person that ever set out, I'm not a journalist, I didn't set out to make documentaries and do what I'm doing. I'm actually a retired chartered accountant, but I'm just so disappointed in the poor quality of reporting, particularly over the last few years, and especially from our ABC, unfortunately, our taxpayer-funded ABC, that I just see these stories or I see these articles and they're just not reporting the full facts. They're not showing both sides of the story. They're selective in what they do put in there. And then our fellow Australians, they're name calling. I mean, that's what bullies in the playground do, name call. If you don't need to name call, you can have a debate and have different points of view. And that used to be what journalism was about, putting forward the different points of view and allowing the public to make their own decisions, which is all I'm trying to do here. I'm just trying to put the facts in front of the people, allow Trevor a right of reply to a derogatory label, which, I personally don't feel is warranted. But again, I don't tell people what to do. Unlike some mainstream media, I don't tell people what to think, or I don't tell people what's right or wrong. I just put the facts out there, and then I allow people to make their own decisions. And I think that's what you need to do. That's what the journalists and the media outlets need to do in a civil society. They need to put all the facts out there so that people can be fully informed. Because if they're not fully informed, we see all sorts of terrible things happening as we've seen over recent years. So yeah, thank you again. I do appreciate the opportunity to share this with your viewers.
Yeah, no, pleasure. I love the content that's been put together. So before we jump into Trevor's story and talk into that a little bit more, just wanted to get maybe a recap of the other quite significant documentaries you've been involved in. One was over 3 hours, was a brief of evidence to our law enforcement and everybody involved in law enforcement and others. It was very substantial evidence put forward, and just wondering where that's at, as well as I believe there was a lot of acclaim behind the Ingi Doyle story, dissection. Did you want to give us a little bit of an update how those two stories are progressing and the traction they've gotten over the time?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Mark. Well, I'll start with Ingi's story. We entered Ingi's story into a number of film festivals around the world, and I'm very pleased to say that yes, we received a lot of acclaim for that excuse me, for that documentary. I think there's about 12 film festivals that we have either been sort of selected or nominated for awards. We've already won 3 awards, and we're finalists in a couple more that are coming up later in the year. And that's not just in Australia. That's, there's one later in the year we'll be going to in Vienna. There's one in Berlin, one in UK, and people can see all of that on the Dissection website. We have all the awards and nominations laid out there on the awards page of that website. Also, on the awards page of that website, people can now watch the full 30-minute documentary, which I highly recommend people do, because there's more information in the full 30-minute short documentary than there is in the 15-minute version that I originally posted just to let people know what was coming. So when you go to that website,
whether that's the right one I've brought up here, but there's this is one off come. Is that the right one, or is it a different one?
Yeah, I think if you go to the, yes, I do need to, and I apologise, I need to update my own Rumble page, because we're just showing the 15-minute one on there at the moment. But if you go to the actual dissection website, actually, no, that might be it, because there was basically what happened was one of the awards we were nominated for, that film festival publicly put up the film for people to vote on. So that may well be it there actually. But you can find access to that on the awards page of the dissectionfilm.com website. That's my website for dissection. So if you go to our website and go to the awards page, again, not the homepage. The homepage just has our 15-minute version. But if you go to the awards page, you can click on the 30-minute version. If you scroll down on the awards page. On the awards. See the tab up the top?
Tab up the top. There we go.
Click on the awards page and scroll down a little bit. And see there, view the full documentary. So that's where people can click. Just go up a little bit. A little bit. See there? If they click there to view full documentary on that little gold bar, if they click there, watch the full documentary, then people also have an opportunity to rate it as well, and that will help in the voting process for when the award is announced. So we're in the running for an award there. So I would like, if people were happy to please go and watch the full documentary, because it does have a lot more of particular Dr. Petrovsky in there as well, with more information from him as well. So it's really worth watching the full 30 minutes. And if people wouldn't mind, please sort of voting after you do that and putting your comments in there, that would be great as well. But no, it's going really well, and we're getting a lot of traction on that one around the world. As I said, a lot of people have seen it and continue to see it. And, I think, as I mentioned last time we spoke, the reason I did Ingi's film was almost like a precursor to Witness Statement, because I know that Witness Statement is a little heavy for people who are just becoming aware of the risks of the vaccine and the fact that so many people have been injured and died as a result of taking that vaccine. So I know that Witness Statement is a bit heavy if you're just sort of becoming aware of this information. So the idea of dissection was just to show people, here's just one very specific example of a severely injured woman who, did what she thought was the right thing because that's what the government were telling her. And as a result, she, almost lost her life and now has to live with the consequences of some pretty serious surgery that she has been through. So that's why I did dissection. And then following on from that, of course, I produced Witness Statement. Now, again, if you go to our Rumble page, because Witness Statement is quite long, first of all, I want to say, even though it is quite long, we had over 1 million views on Witness Statement within the first 4 or 5 weeks of it being released. So, again, very well received. I haven't had any negative feedback or anything to say there's anything there that's not accurate, because I do have everything fully referenced. And when you go on to watch the film, underneath in the notes, we have every single link that's shown on the film, referencing all of the material that's in there. So if anyone wants to check any of that information for themselves, they can click on the links and find that. Also, as you'll see there on the screen, and thank you for pulling that up, Mark, because for some people, they don't have 2.5 hours to sit down in one hit. So as you'll see there, I've actually produced the same film in 9 parts. So if people want to watch it bit by bit, they can just go through parts 1 to 9, one at a time, to watch the full film. And then, of course, after that, we have the updates as well, where I explain to people what's been happening with Witness Statement. I have sent it to all police commissioners. So the latest update, I guess, which I haven't put out yet, is since my first round of sending Witness Statement to all the police commissioners, I think it was about 6 commissioners either resigned or people that were temporarily filling those roles didn't take them up. So because of that, because of that, I then resent the Witness Statement by mail to all the police commissioners, including all the new ones. And then since I did that, there were 2 more resignations. Now, again, I'm not saying it's the film that's caused that, but I like to think that, they are getting it and taking it seriously, and perhaps that played a part in them, for whatever reason, if they weren't able to do the investigations that everyone's asking for, perhaps that did play some part in their decisions not to continue in their roles. I'll never know, of course, but I do feel it's important that we do just, keep calling for these investigations. We cannot, call ourselves a civil society when so many people have died and been injured and the police are not investigating the causes. It's just, to me, not a civil society if that's going on. So people continue to make those calls, people continuing to use Witness Statement as sort of a way of explaining to people what's going on. Witness Statement's actually been submitted into 3 legal cases that I'm aware of. people have asked me, can they use it as evidence? I also am aware that there are quite a few people around the country taking it into police stations, asking them to watch it. They're taking it into pharmacies, asking them to watch it and please stop giving people the injection. So it still has momentum behind it. It's not going away. And as I said, about 1 million views within the first 4 to 5 weeks, and it continues to rise every day. So more and more people are becoming aware of that evidence that's available. And again, as you do, I encourage people to do their own research. I encourage people to go and check the facts in there. I don't tell people what to think. I just lay out the facts and leave it to the people to decide what action they feel they should take, if any, and what conclusions they come to from the evidence in front of them. So, so that's basically an update at the moment on those two.
Yeah, excellent. And obviously people, if they jump on the Rumble, they've obviously got that avenue, but also your Substack. If people want to subscribe, they'll have regular, you'll update where you can with those updates on both of those. So that's really, really great bit of content there. So if we jump across now to what we're talking about today, which is obviously Trevor's story, and this is all a bit new, news to a lot of people. It doesn't get covered really well, apart from obviously the slurs from the ABC in regards to just labelling people, and we've seen that a lot over the last 5 years, haven't we? I've been on the receiving end. There's been a lot of othering by our government bureaucrats as well as the media, and it's this real reflexively kind of response to anybody that speaks out counter narrative, and it's like to just labeled straight away. But what made you get involved, or how did you get involved in this particular story, and to then eventually bring it to a short film?
Yeah, Mark, and I agree with everything you just said. I mean, I think it's quite, as I say, for me, I keep asking the same question: where are the adults in the room? Where are the adults in government and media that they think it's okay to keep slurring people and name calling them instead of simply getting the facts and reporting it? It still shocks me every day when I see that going on. I would have thought by now that they'd be so embarrassed by their, the way they're behaving, that it would stop, but it continues. And I guess the whole fire ant thing is something that I have been aware of for a little while. And the reason I've been aware of it is because quite a number of people have contacted me about it, because they're very concerned that there's this National Fire Ant Eradication Program, that's the NFAEP. It's partially federally funded and partially state funded, but it's being administered out of the Department of Primary Industries in Queensland, which was formerly the Department of Fisheries and Forestries. And there's a huge, I call it a poisoning program, and other people may want to refer to it differently, but for me, it's a huge poisoning program going on in a very large area of southeast Queensland. And most people aren't really aware of it until it comes to them, until it comes knocking on their door. And look, no one disagrees that fire ants need to be, killed, eradicated, whatever, and we would all like to do that. But it's the way they're going about it that is the concern, because they're not just going and killing nests when they see them. They believe that they're able to eradicate them by baiting. Basically what they do is when they find a nest, they will put a 5-kilometre radius around that and bait that whole area, because they say that the ants can fly up to 5 kilometres. And if they disturb a nest, then the queen might fly off. But if you think about that, 5-kilometre radius is a 78 square kilometre area. So you find one nest and you're poisoning 78 square kilometres of land. I mean, seriously? That just is, to me, lunacy. It's absolute lunacy, right? And this is why people are concerned, because first of all, they're doing it over our forests. They're doing it in waterways. They're doing it in all public areas. There's been many reports of, animals being dying, pets dying when they go out walking and they eat these baits. People's, there's so much more to this story that I may tell you one day. But I think for the purposes now for this film, the reason I got involved here is because, people had told me about the fire ant film, and I was, the fire ant issue. And I was looking into a little bit, because I'm concerned, living in southeast Queensland, I'm very concerned that all my, forests and waterways and everything are being poisoned by these baits. So, but I hadn't really looked into it too much. But then when I saw this story from Trevor, I had come across Trevor prior to this, and I thought, well, wait on, Trevor's not a conspiracy theorist. Trevor's someone who did allow them to come onto his property and bait since 2019. But then you'll see in the story what happened to him. And as a result, he started doing his investigation and his own research. And he started to look at non-toxic ways to deal with these pests. Because again, no one disagrees to get rid of the pests. It's the way they're going about it that he's concerned about. So I won't tell you too much more. But as I said, because we'll see it in the film, but as I said, my concern was I just couldn't sit back and see what I consider to be a good Australian who's actually trying to help both himself, his neighbours and all Australia. If we can come up with a non-toxic treatment, surely that's a good thing that an Australian man has taken it upon himself to do and license this machine and, you know, put in his own money to do this. And then Southern Cross University, and I take my hat off to them for, you know, saying, yeah, we agree this is a good idea. We'll partner with you and do proper research here. Because again, we don't want hearsay. We don't want, you know, someone says it works. We want the proper research. We want the data. We want the peer-reviewed science. And Southern Cross University, I'm very pleased to say they stepped in to do that with Trevor. And then for ABC to turn around and say, oh, you know, shame on Southern Cross University for working with a conspiracy theorist. I mean, to me, it's just appalling. It's absolutely appalling. And under fire for giving research. Well, how are they under fire? By whom? I've not heard anyone saying that they're doing the wrong thing. The first I've heard of them being under fire is this article. So as I said, I saw this article. It did make me very upset to see our taxes being used in this way. And I thought, right, I'm going to use my own money and go and get a film crew and go and film Trevor and give him a right of reply, give him an opportunity to tell his side of the story. Because when we have one-sided reporting like this, someone, I feel, has to give the other side. And in this case, I'm the one trying to do that for the people. So that's sorry, it's probably a long story, but that's how it came about.
No, look, and God bless you for that. And you know, it's the forgotten people that you seem to be able to put a voice, their voice into. But I was, you know, also glancing that article, and you know, a couple of regular things that come up even through COVID is, you know, their wording is the university has confirmed it has allocated funding to Trevor Holden, organic cattle farmer who has spread misinformation about Australia's fire ant treatment program. Mr. Holden is an administrator for Stop Toxic Fire Ant Program, an activist group that incorrectly claims fire ant bait kills. So this is how they work. This is the government funded ABC, well, taxpayer funded ABC that continues to go down the same path it has during COVID and label anybody that questions or researches or challenges the narrative that might be spread at the time, and they automatically label these you know, straight away it's conspiracy theorist, misinformation and incorrect claims and other stuff, and that's what I think's got a lot of people very frustrated in this country, that we're funding to the tune of $1.2 billion an outfit that just, you know, isn't impartial, isn't unbiased. It just straight away takes these kind of directions, which is very disappointing.
Yeah, can I just add one thing to that, Mark? What upsets me as well is they make statements like that Trevor has incorrectly claimed whatever. But I never see them give their evidence. Where's their evidence of what they're saying? They're saying he's incorrectly claimed these things, but I have literally talked to dozens and dozens of people, and I've seen hundreds of posts of people who have reacted to these baits. Their pets have died after the baiting, all sorts of other issues that I've seen online and that I've spoken to people myself. So why is that incorrect? Why is it incorrect to say those things? And why is it incorrect to quote scientific papers? If it is incorrect, show us the evidence that you have, and then we can have the debate, which is how a civil society works. You don't just slander one side without putting forward your evidence. So please, ABC, put forward the evidence that shows he's incorrect, and then let's have a look at the evidence he may or others may have, and let's have a debate. That's how a civil society works.
Yeah, exactly right. And as far as you're aware, Deborah, you may not know this, but do you feel, is the Southern Cross University now under pressure to pull this? Is there funding? Is it going to stop the research and all that sort of thing?
No, look, fortunately, I did see a follow-up article from Southern Cross University, and again, I really take my hat off to them, because they're not buying into the slander and the defamation. They're just being professional and presenting, well, this is what we've done, here's what we're finding so far. And I think they found that, don't quote me on this because I don't have it in front of me, but it was something like after 3 treatments, it was 90 to 100% effective, this hot water system. Because also in the article the ABC wrote, they said that the Marnie Manning, who's the head of the NFAEP program, stated that they have investigated hot water, thoroughly, and it doesn't work. But again, that to me, again, with just a little bit of my own research, which the ABC journalist could have done, he might have found that this machine that Trevor's using has never been used in Australia before. He's the first one to license it. It's actually an expert in the US that has developed this machine, and Trevor's off his own bat went to license it to try it out in Australia to see if it'll work for Australia. So I don't know how the NFAEP can claim to have thoroughly investigated this when this is the only machine in Australia of its type. Now, I think what possibly they're referring to, and I say this in my Substack article, possibly they're referring to sort of pulling off the ant top of the nest and pouring hot water in, but that's not what this machine is. This machine is much more sophisticated than that. And in the US, it's getting very good results. And even the initial studies by the Southern Cross University are showing good results. So, to claim that we've investigated it thoroughly and this is a conspiracy theorist is just appalling reporting, in my personal opinion. So I don't believe, as I said, from the article I saw, the follow-up article of Southern Cross University, it appears to me they're just acting as the university should, professionally, ethically, and continuing with the research and just simply reporting the facts, which is what we expect the university to do.
Absolutely, and perhaps when you get time before this goes live, we might be able to get the link for that, and I can include it in into the Substack when it's uploaded and that as well. So they might be able to do that.
Or I can send that to you. Yep, thank you. Sorry, I didn't have it available today. I should have thought about that.
No, that's okay. That's all good. We cover a lot of stuff when we're talking about these things. We can't have everything on hand. So, clearly you're aware of this. You wanted to get the story out. You've done this again, and spent your own time and energy and money to do this. So you're definitely to be commended on that. How about we now play that, unless you wanted to say anything else before we play the actual documentary, which runs for about 20 minutes, and we can watch that with the viewers. And then after that, maybe you could do a recap and a sort of a message home for people after we've viewed the documentary. Are we about that stage?
Yes, I think so. That's great. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, we'll play that now, and we'll get that. I'll just bring the screen up, and then we can get into that.
This is Genesis Novell, this property. We started it in 2014. We bought this property. I had a defence contract where I was designing vehicles for the defence on Project Overlander 121. With that, helped us create a new beginning, and that's what Genesis Novell means, is a new beginning. I asked my partner what she wanted to do after her diagnosis with ovary cancer. We thought it was fatal, going to be fatal for her. And she told me stories of going to the farm at Flagstone Creek with her uncles as a kid, and how she enjoyed spending time with the cattle. And she said, I would love to buy a small block of dirt and get some cows. Luck has it that, you know, after a few years of checking and a full hysterectomy, whilst there was some other medical issues in regards to, you know, fused organs and this and that, there was no cancer found, and Jodie was clear. When I turned 40, I'm 46 now. When I turned 40, I started the journey to try and utilise my previous industries to help other people and community service. So I started doing Cert 4 in mental health. I didn't know how it would go. So I started off just with the certificate course. Took me 2 years to go through and got that. And I was doing a lot of work on the Gold Coast and that, doing my work experience in that there. And then sort of COVID hit in 2020, as everyone knows, you know, and I was still very new to the industry, but working as a mental health practitioner and supporting people, that border closure created a lot of negative impacts on a lot of people. And there was not a lot I could do. I didn't have much of a voice. I didn't have much experience back then, but I could see the pain in people's eyes where they lived on one side of the border and their support was on the other, and they literally couldn't get it. And these people, you know, were suicidal or whatever, or you know, had mental challenges, and there was all sorts of family disputes and work disputes. People couldn't go to work, and there was all sorts of issues I was hearing just with this imaginary line that they decided to close everything down, you know. And I was trying my best, you know, on the Zoom calls and trying to support people as I could, and continued the journey to do my diploma in counselling. So I've done that. That took me 2 years to get through, all the while learning about myself as well, because, you know, we're trying to redevelop our lives and develop industries, you know, with some fruit, vegetables and markets and ways of generating money on the property. One of the things, the conditions of the farm was, you know, we don't have cows for slaughter. They're not for meat. They're for pets. And that was one of the mad concepts that we're trying to work with, you know, and it's sort of a breakthrough industry that not many people were doing. It got to the point, like when we used to have yabbies in the dam, you know, we'd catch the yabbies and they'd get a name. If you had a name, you couldn't eat the yabbies. So we couldn't even, you know, eat the yabbies in our own dam. They were all called Blue Claw or Bluey or One Claw or, you know, all sorts of names like that. So trying to generate a small cattle herd, an income from a small cattle herd, was challenging, and, you know, we come up with the concept of, you know, using it for mental health purposes and creating better outcomes for people's overall health and well-being by just chilling with the cows. But even before COVID hit in 2019 was when this property started to be treated by the National Fire Ant Eradication Program. Back then, it had a strategy where there was a radius around Noel Ness. So there's a Gatton University campus up the road, and we got within a 5 or 8 kilometre radius of Noel Ness that were found on the Gatton campus. So originally, it was helicopters, and the helicopters were just relentless for months, doing all this area. It was almost like a war zone, over the property, over the dam, over the house, everywhere at the start. In 2019, it was relentless, yeah, for months. This whole area, up the hills, all these waterways come through here. One of the horses run through the fence and got injured, and one of the cattle got injured in the barbed wire fences because the noise from the helicopter was spooking them. I was very angry about the cattle. So I said, look, we can't have any low-flying activity on here. So they said, okay, that's all right, we'll get some motorbikes in. And so they come here with some motorbikes with spray bars. At the time, it was a drought. There was no water in the dam at all. It was all drought. And I remember one of the times they come here, they were hooning. They were like cowboys, and they were using it like a endurance race or something, running up and down the dam walls there and up in the bed of the dam in the water. I remember asking them at the time if it was safe, and, you know, they said, oh, don't worry about it, you know, it's harmless, you know, it's all safe and effective. And And I feel bad that I didn't investigate it further back then, but, you know, I just trusted that, no, they're doing what they have to do, you know, and they went along. But that motorbike scenario also stressed out my cattle and my horses. I said, look, you can't do that. And I was fighting with them all the time. And my primary concern was the fact that they're stressing out the horses and stressing out the cattle, running them through the fences. We haven't got very good fences anyway. It's just all barbed wire. It's not like a big commercial place or anything. There's no wooden, you know, it's not safe fencing. It's just cheap fencing. And, you know, it's not designed to, you know, for spooked animals. These are quite handled everyday animals. They're not wild animals, and it's not, doesn't need to be normally on normal circumstances. Anyway, and then they said, and then next time they says, okay, we'll just come and hand treat it. I said, oh, that'd be better. But then they rocked up with like 20 or 30 people in a line in their high-vis shirts, and they just marching, two by two or whatever with their thing. And that just freaked the animals out even more, you know, and they just had no common sense at all with how to behave in the paddocks with the animals. And I said, look, this is not good enough. I said, you can't do it. And then I said to them, I said, look, it's not unreasonable for you to tell me what day you want to come. I said, treat 2 paddocks, and then I'll make sure there's no animals in them paddocks, and then come back, and then I'll swap the animals around so they're in them paddocks, and then come and treat the rest of the place, you know. And they said, oh yeah, we can do that, Trevor, there'll be no worries, you know. And they says, we'll come with 4 people. They said, we'll come with 4 people and do 2 paddocks of your choosing, and then you can swap around the animals and then we'll come back later and do the rest, you know. And I said, because I said to them at the time, I said, look, we're not going to give you access to the back paddock because this is all waterways, you know, the whole lot's waterways. You know, if it rains here, that's all waterways. This is all waterways, all through here. It's all flows into the water. There's channels there. I know there's some dry channels there, but it's all, when it rains, it's all flows, you know. And I said, look, I'm not going to give you access to the waterways. It says on your permit you can't do that anyway. And they come in, they've done a couple of paddocks, and then we moved around the animals. That was March 2024 when they come and treated 2 paddocks, and we had that agreement, and they come and done that. And I hadn't heard anything back from them. I had my first calf die on the 30th of November 2023. We took it to the vet, and they tested it for snake bites, and there's no snake bites, and tested it for anything, and, you know, they couldn't find anything. And, you know, and it was just sort of discussed about, you know, must have been some sort of toxin or liver problem is what was discussed, or whatever. About 6 months later, it was about the June the following year, 2024, when the second calf was born, and it had tight tendons, so it had feet. It was like on its tippy toes when it was walking, and that's the first time that we ever seen that as well. And we were sort of researching it, and they're saying, oh, sometimes a calf can grow too big for mum, and it gets squashed up a bit, and just needs to loosen up its tendons a bit, and talk to the vet, and there's some sort of antibiotics you can give it to loosen up its tendons, and we just treated it for that, you know, and didn't think much more of it. But it had the same symptoms and the same decline in cognitive ability over that 6-week period. So and it was euthanized on the 9th of June. I started to get really, really suspicious now about that's a second calf, and I started researching about it now, and I'd done some research that other people were saying that they had a greater miscarriage rate in their cattle where the treatment's been done. You know, people have been reporting on it, and I've seen some ads on LinkedIn, some commentary on LinkedIn saying similar things, and I started looking into it, and I asked the vet, when we euthanized the second one, can we get it tested? Because the first one, it was late at night, and the vet said, oh, our freezers are full, and there was it was on the weekend, and there was no opportunity to put it in the freezer or whatever and take it in on Monday. It always happens at in proper times, but this time we could plan it, and we planned it and euthanized it and took it straight down to USQ for a necropsy. And we got some preliminary data from the vet saying, oh, they're talking about toxic liver poisoning. So it's about this time I emailed the guy, because I told him, look, I'm not talking anymore because everything was words. I said, look, we've got to put everything in writing. I says, I have concerns. I've got some dead cows, some dead calves. I said, I've got some severe concerns, And until they're addressed, I said, I'm not letting you back on the property. And I could tell there was a serious problem because I was ghosted for 2 months after that. They never got back to me. They never answered me from that at all. And several emails went by unanswered. And as I'm getting some feedback from the vet talking about, possibly liver toxic chemicals. And then when I got the necropsy report, that's when, I started, really seriously think, well, what's going on here, and really started to show some serious concern. Yeah. At the end of the day, I am responsible for the health and well-being of the animals that reside on this property. That is my job as a human, a custodian of the fine, magnificent creatures that reside here. And it's my responsibility to keep them safe. And I will continue to advocate for them to keep them safe. And I feel, even though it's not documented anywhere, that we have the right not to be exposed unnecessarily to toxic chemicals. I feel that I'm fighting for my choice not to expose my cattle to toxic chemicals. There's obviously something wrong. The scientific evidence that's available for anyone to view, peer-reviewed thing, is saying repeated excessive exposure to these toxic chemicals creates different effects depending on environmental conditions, depending on weather, depending on animal susceptibility. There's so many factors involved in this broad-scale baiting. For example, this small acreage farm has a lot of stock on it per acre than what other places would have. And the research says that in areas of high concentrates of urea and manure, then the chemicals are going to last much longer in this environment than what it would on some residential block that doesn't have any cows staying on it. So it varies from site to site. So not considering, and also this site in the drought was specifically designed that all runoff from the rain goes to the dam, which is the cow's drinking water. So if it rains and there's still bait on the ground, it's going to end up in the cow's drinking water. So obviously that's a risk that I have that other people don't have, who don't have cattle or don't have livestock, but also don't have the full runoff that I've got into the dam. But generally, it doesn't matter where you bait. If it rains, it's going to wash into a waterway. They literally ghosted me for months, and when they did talk to me, it was just all innuendo, and you could tell there was something seriously wrong with this program. Yeah.
Please watch out, please don't get hurt. You got.
So I've been charged criminally as obstructing police, yeah. And that's a process that I have to continue going through to see the extreme behaviour that they went to force entry onto my property that didn't have fire ants, to make a stand about distributing chemicals on properties, 100% of properties, in the eradication area, no matter what, no reasonable excuse considered. I presented a reasonable excuse, which included an open letter from Dr. Joshua King from the University of Central Florida that says prophylactic treatment of these chemicals in areas where there are no fire ants actually creates an environment that will hasten the distribution and spread of fire ants into that area, due to the fact that these chemicals are non-target specific to fire ants. They'll kill any ant, and ants are the best defense against fire ant invasion. So by putting these chemicals out where there are no fire ants, they're killing the native ants, which are creating an environment that's going to help fire ant spread to this property. So you know, that's one of them. But also done the training with Dr. King as well, with my hot water machine that I bought, because I wanted to be proactive with my biosecurity obligation, and I felt I needed to do everything I could to understand the biology of fire ants, understand how to treat them, come up with alternatives, because obviously I investigated the program. They didn't have any non-chemical alternatives. So I thought, you know, I'm going to investigate this and provide some alternative technologies for that. And I've done the National Fire Ant Eradication Identification Certificates as well on the thing. And all that added substance to my reasonable excuse. I was meeting my biosecurity obligations. I was learning all about fire ants. I was providing alternatives. I was surveying my property. There's no fire ants here. There's no fire ants in the neighbouring properties anywhere. And you know, and it wasn't even considered. And the problem is the Department of Primary Industries, or National Fire Ant Eradication Program, feel that they're the ones that are judge, jury and executioner of the decision-making process, and they didn't even respond. They wouldn't even respond to a reasonable excuse that I presided on a stat deck that involved, at the time, that was 2 dead calves, plus all them other things. I sent it to them before Christmas in December, sent it to them in January, and sent it to them in February. Zero response at all. So I sent them the reasonable excuse with the stat deck and 3 notices that remained unanswered even to this day. And even when they come here on the 16th of April, that reasonable excuse that I presented to them remained unanswered. I still haven't got an answer on what that result was. I didn't have a choice to appeal their decision. Only a court can decide what is reasonable and what is not reasonable. These guys are trying to bypass that whole process and make the decision themselves, because their process only can work, and it can't work anyway, but they must do 100% coverage 3 times a year if it's to work. And so they're denying people's medical certificates, they're denying people's allergies, that people are getting rashes from the chemicals, respiratory problems. There's people that are on severe lung transplant waiting lists that are impacted from the dust of the aerial spraying that they're ignoring, and kids with allergic reactions to the stuff that are getting rashes all over their face that are being ignored. So there's not a single thing that they can accept, because if there's one gap in their plan for their strategy to even come close to working, they must kill off every single ant and kill off everything in that eradication program. But as you can see, eradication was impossible when they first discovered them in 2001, and it remains impossible now with probably a million hectares of land in southeast Queensland invaded by fire ants. So yeah.
Well, there you go. That was quite powerful to watch again. I did watch it before we obviously plan to catch up again, and it's quite powerful to watch again. And again, well done, Deborah, for telling that story so well. And I want to take this opportunity, just I wrote down some things while I was watching again, and about Trevor, what I picked up about Trevor. And I just felt he was a decent guy. He was very articulate, obviously, genuine, empathic, self-motivated, resilient, willing to learn and educate himself, community-minded, well-researched, and very compliant. So wanting to work with the NFAEP all the way through his journey. So I think the label attributed to him by the ABC is very disingenuous and very disappointing, I feel, after watching that. So yeah, again, I think you've done an amazing job there putting that together.
Thank you, Mark. I guess I'd probably like to finish on just 2 points I'd like to say. First of all, Trevor, even though I've told Trevor's story, I don't want people to think, oh, that's just one person that they, for whatever reason decided to sort of attack and force themselves on their property. When Trevor said in that film that the fire ants have spread to 1 million hectares of property, that's not a 100% accurate statement. It's not that it's spread to 100,000 hectares of property. It's that it's spread in that sort of distance to, and that's the amount of property that has been captured in this eradication zone. As I said, there might be one nest. And look, I know there are, and don't get me wrong, I know there are places where there are lots of nests and it is a problem, and no one's disputing that, and no one's saying we don't want to get in there and kill those ants. But they are capturing so much bigger areas that where there are no fire ants, just to prevent them coming, supposedly. But I don't know how you prevent them coming if they're not there and you put down baits. The baits only last a couple of days. So who do you think's taking the baits? It's not, the fire ants aren't there yet, and maybe will never be there. And as I said, and they're also spreading it over forests, and they're not meant to spread it over waterways. But of course, when you're spreading that much all over forests and, all sorts of areas, it makes its way into the waterways. And the NFAEP have already been admitted up at, I think it's Dawson Creek up near Sanford, that they did put it in the water, and it has, there was a toxicology report again that an Australian need to go out and get themselves. It wasn't the program looking into that. So I guess I just want to say to people, look, don't think this is a one-off. I'm aware, based on a Senate inquiry, as of, I think, last September, I think there was something like 1,242 people who had similar situation where the police had accompanied the NFAEP officers because the people had said, no, we don't consent. So they brought the police in and forced entry. So this is, and I believe that might be up to as many as 2,000 people now. So this isn't something that's just affecting Trevor or just affecting a few people in southeast Queensland. It's spreading. And once again, in my opinion, and again, I'm not a legal person, it's just my opinion, I believe that both the officers from the Department of Primary Industries under this program and the police may well be acting unlawfully in what they're doing. But once again, if they are acting unlawfully, they do it anyway, people get their lives ruined, and later on we find out, oh no, that you weren't supposed to do that. Well, no, we need to stand up now. We need to stand up before the damage is done and stand together and get the facts and understand our rights and make sure that our rights are being heard, that we're not just allowing government officers or people with a badge and a gun to say you must do this and you have no rights, because we do have rights. There are, particularly in Queensland, we have a Human Rights Act. Where are our human rights being respected here? So I won't go into too much more detail, but I guess I just would like people to really share this film so that people are aware this issue is going on, because people don't really become aware of it until they knock on your door. So I just encourage people to please share it and please be vigilant and please, do your own research, find out about these products, find out about your rights, and find out about how these products could potentially be harming our environment, not just killing off fire ants. So that's the first thing. And the second thing I would just encourage people to do is please contact the ABC if you agree with me that their reporting is not good journalism and is not accurately describing, the story with all facts on the table. Because I know I speak to a lot of people, and look, maybe it's just the people I hang out with, I don't know, but I know a lot of people have been calling for the ABC to be defunded, and I'm not sure ABC employees are even aware of that. I'm not sure they're even aware that so many people are so disappointed in the poor quality of journalism coming out of ABC. Not all of it, obviously, but many stories like this. And I think if we don't tell them, we can't assume they know that. And I think a lot of people do that. A lot of people just assume they know that we're not happy with their reporting and we're not happy with the name calling and the slurs. And, I think a lot of people just assume, well, of course they know we're not happy with that. Who would be? But I'm not sure they do. I think we need to tell them. So I would just encourage others to do what I'm doing and call them out and write to them or ring them or let them know that this is not what we want our taxes going towards. We do not want our taxes going towards treating a man like this, who, and I think your assessment of Trevor, Mark, is 100% accurate, in my opinion, and based on meeting the man, talking to him. I think your assessment's 100% accurate. And if people like that, good Australians like that, are being slurred by our national broadcaster with our money that's paying their wages, I think we've got a big problem in this country. So please, people, please share this. Let the ABC know you're not happy and be vigilant and understand your rights in respect of this Fire Ant program. They're my closing remarks. Thank you, Mark.
Yeah, no, 100%, and I think you nailed it on the head there. The problem we've seen is even in the last 5 years, and a lot of people say, well, let's not always revisit that, but there's a lot of stuff that still needs to come out of that last 5 years. But again, the ABC and others media have reported very poorly and very disingenuously, and labelling a vast number of Australians with labels that are just not right or true. And this is again the same story coming back again. And the unfortunate thing, though, isn't it, Deborah, that so many people tune into the ABC. It's into their lounge rooms, streamed into their lounge rooms via TV, via radio. ABC is on all the main the social media platforms, and it's just streamed that way. But then, when does unless someone like you comes along, when does someone like Trevor get his his day to say his side of the story? And unfortunately, what happens once a story like this from the ABC goes out to millions of Australians, there is then no, unless there's a lot of public pressure, then there isn't a follow-up to say, oh, look, we may have got this wrong, or, our reporting wasn't very genuine, and it wasn't genuine, it wasn't, very complimentary towards Trevor. But there's none of that, because you never get any of that. The story goes out, millions of people see it, and everybody labels someone like Trevor in exactly the same light as what our national broadcasters labelled them. So, look, something definitely needs to change, and there is a lot of people calling for a defunding or massive restructure of some sort. So no, I totally agree with what you're saying. And I was also reflecting when we were watching that and the whole story about the NFAEP. Obviously, there's a lot of funding involved with that. The product, the people that make the product, obviously there's a lot there. And call me cynical, but the last 5 years there seems to be a lot of invested interests in this program. And yes, I might be cynical, and people might label me as well, but always follow the money in my eyes. And when a massive public broadcaster like our ABC comes after someone, you have to wonder, okay, what else is behind it? So look, and people can make their own assertions about that. They can think about them themselves. Obviously that's just my cynical mind kicking into action after living through the last sort of 5 odd years of COVID.
Can I just say one more thing too, Mark?
Yeah.
The thing that astounds me about this whole program is, of course, it's similar to other things we've seen over recent years, where they start with a big fear campaign. And one of the things they say in their fear campaign is, if we let these ants take over, they'll ruin our Australian way of life. Well, look at what's happening to Trevor and thousands of people in southeast Queensland. the program is already ruining people's lives. And there are no fire ants on these people's properties. So, you know, how can you say, oh, we have to stop this at all costs or it'll ruin our lives? You're ruining people's... These ants have actually been here for 25 years. I don't see... And again, I'm not saying they're not a problem in some areas and some farming areas, etc. I'm not saying that. But I don't see that they've ruined the entire Australian way of life. But what I do see ruining the entire Australian way of life is weaponising the police against the people to support government programs, which, once again, we have been told are necessary, but no one is showing us the data or the science. Show us the data and science, show us that this is necessary, and then work with us to find a solution that is not more damaging than the problem to start with.
Yeah, well said. Absolutely right. And just before we close up, I was just going to mention to people that might be listening on audio devices, there was parts of that documentary where music was playing, but there was script on the screen. So if you did want to check out the documentary again, jump onto the Rumble site for Global Truth Network and check out the movie again. It's obviously a bit hard when you are watching or listening on devices where you can't see it. So definitely recommend jumping on the, and I'm just going to bring them up again, Debra. So your Global Truth Network on Rumble, as the documentaries there that we discussed earlier, and obviously also your Substack, Global Truth Network .substack.com.
Also, Mark, that article that we were mentioned about Southern Cross Unity, I forgot that it was in the actual film as well. So that article where Southern Cross Unity put out their results and how they were going, that was in the film. So you can read it there, and but I can find it and send it to you as well.
Yeah, that'd be great. And I think I'm not sure whether that's whether I'll just bring this up and see if I can, maybe if that's the one you're talking about. This part in the film is yeah. So that's in the film, and people, because this was part of the section where there was just music playing, and you were going through some of the details there on that article. Yep. So that's, if people want to check that out, that's actually in the film. You can see the links there and follow that. So and Debra,
that article that article came out after the ABC article. So back to your question about whether they're under pressure not to continue, obviously not. And as I say, I take my hat off to them for being a reputable, highly respected and ethical university that has is doing the right thing and researching something that's important to our environment and to the people, and carrying through with that research. And trying to get some proper data and proper peer-reviewed paper out there so that we can see if this is a viable option.
Yeah, amazing. Good on them. Like you say, credit to institutions that are actually doing the right thing. And just in closing then, Debra, like, you've invested a lot of time and effort. You obviously genuinely care about the plight of the underdog and that. And so is there a way that listeners, viewers could support you? Is there, how do they do that? Is that an option for people?
Look, what I would like is, if there are any funders out there that could fund making more films, that would be fantastic, because it is quite expensive. You know, some of my films I'm able to piece together from things online, but a lot of them, like Ingi's film and this one, I actually hire a film crew, and it is quite expensive. So yes, certainly if there was anyone out there that wanted to contribute some funding towards making more films, that would be great. But other than that, it's really just sharing it around, because again, I will continue to speak the truth until the media starts doing their job properly again, because we have to. We don't have a civil society if the truth is not getting to the people. So it's really important that that we do tell the truth and we do get this information out there. And perhaps, Mark, I might come back next week if I could, because I do have one more follow-up film on this as well, of another group being impacted. Because as I said, this isn't a one-off story. Trevor's is not a one-off story. And one of the main reasons I'm doing this particular film, this one and the one I'll show you next week, is because it's not just the underdog that's being affected here. This is our whole environment we're talking about. This is our whole ecosystem. This is the beautiful Gold Coast hinterland. You know, anyone who thinks, oh, well, this is in Queensland, doesn't affect me. Well, if you want to go to the Gold Coast and have a holiday, you know, at the moment that area is being pretty heavily poisoned in some places. If you want to go to beautiful Samford in north of Brisbane, again, it's being heavily poisoned at the moment. So I'm doing it for the underdog, but I'm also doing it for our environment. We need to protect our environment. This is really important. So, but yes, thank you for mentioning that. But yeah, I think the main thing is, yeah, if someone, if there's any funders out there that would like to fund more films, or alternatively, the other way people can really help is just to get this out there, because when you put in this much work to do this, time and money and all the rest of it, it would be a shame that it's not being used as much as possible to share accurate information. That's all I'm really asking from people.
Yeah, so the big message is there for all you philanthropists in Australia, or if this happens to get seen overseas and you believe in this, the work that Debra's doing, and you've got some money that you can contribute, then reach out to Debra to support in ways to get some of these more amazing films out there as well, and contribute towards the amazing work that Debra's doing. So, Debra, thank you so much, and really appreciate your time, and obviously looking forward to catching up next week. You know, this platform's always available for you and the work that you're doing, so greatly appreciated. And all I can say is God bless you, and God bless the work that you're doing and can continue to do. So thanks so much.
And thank you as well, Mark. Thank you for what you do. And for those people who do want to know more about this fire ant issue, I will keep Mark updated, and I definitely would like to come on if I have any other information or news. So you please follow Mark to see more information as well. So thank you as well, Mark.
No, my pleasure. And going to treat, when I usually end my shows on this new podcast, I like a bit of the Christian blues lately, and I'm playing a few little blues tunes from a site called Holy Groove on YouTube. So that's what's going to be the outro today is Psalm 1, Like a Tree by the River. And I'm going to play that now for you on the outro. And yeah, all the best, Debra, and looking forward to catching up with you soon.
Thanks, Mark.
Blessed is the man who walks not in the dark, don't sit with the wicked, don't stand where they bark, but delights in the word both day and night. Like a tree by the river, he stands upright. He's like a tree, roots digging deep. In season he bears what the faithful reap. Leaves don't wither, winds don't shake. The Lord knows the road the righteous take. But the wicked hold their dust in the air. Like chaff in the wind, they vanish somewhere. They won't stand in judgment when truth appears. They chose their path, but not their fear. Watches every step I tread, guides the humble, raises the dead. But the road of the wicked fades and bends, while grace rolls on without no end. He's like a tree, roots digging deep. In season he bears what the faithful reap. Leaves don't wither, winds don't shake. The Lord knows the road the righteous take. I'll keep singing that blessed tune. Planted in mercy, pruned by truth.